second. Alright, link out. Alright, had a little bit of technical issues. First attempt at stream got interrupted by cat. Second attempt at stream got interrupted by somehow I unplugged my microphone. So hopefully third time is the charm. Welcome to the live stream. This is John Markish, also known as Rashidi. I've been editing NBA 2K rosters since 2003. You can basically think of me as a rabid NBA superfan. I got started back in 2003. I bought 2K13, 2K3, and I loved the gameplay, but the rosters were absolutely atrocious back then. Um, too many issues to list. Started making adjustments. Posted all my player edits on GameFAQs.com. That got pretty popular, so I kept doing it for a couple of years. People started sending me their memory cards to add my roster file. This is back before you could download rosters off of 2K's server. People were literally memory cards back then were a huge deal. Like you couldn't play the rest of your PlayStation without it, games without it. So like, imagine mailing off your hard drive to get a sports roster. That's essentially what people were doing a short time ago, 10 years ago. People were still doing that, So we've had some significant technological upgrades that have helped the process quite a bit. So I no longer do the guides on GameFAQs or write out my roster edits. I can just upload the edits and stuff, and you guys might know me from my blog, thereal2kinsider.blogspot.com. Haven't really updated that in a while, but you might be familiar with my work from that, and I have been a poster on various forums, begrudgingly, for the past couple years. And so if you're finding me from any of those forums, welcome. Hey, nice to see you. I will be taking live questions during this broadcast, though I do have a script that I would like to follow somewhat, so I'll try to squeeze them in. If you have anything for me, feel free to leave a comment and I'll see it. So the first thing I wanted to do was just go over 2K's roster file and kind of outline what they've done well and what they could improve. That I think we should really go over is the overall rating. Has the team that they have doing the ratings right now, they generally have a very good grasp of where these players should be rated relative to like 5 years ago. The player overall rating is very important, as it basically dictates how valuable the player is during a my GM or my league or my career experience. It's the AI uses it to evaluate like how much we should be signing players for, what kind of trade value we should be getting back for said player, who's going to start, and 2K's improved quite a bit in this regard. I wish I could remember some of the awful overall ratings from previous 2Ks off the top of my head, but needless to say, they used to be really bad, and now they're great. Part of this is because they kind of have the band-aid to get the overall rating to exactly where they want it, but in terms of like the actual rating itself, I don't have any problems with it, and it makes the game roster look good at a surface level. And of course, this video is going to be breaking down what things look like when you look a little deeper. So beyond the overall rating, I like that they instituted the most recent attribute that they added was the contested shot rating, and I believe the off dribble shot rating was called moving shot rating like 2 years ago. So they kind of broke down the moving shot rate. It's still called the move, like mid move or whatever, but it's more specifically off dribble. And if you recall, like 10 years ago, shoot off dribble was an attribute. This is kind of just like a more specific version of that. And I mean, basically, what it does is you take a look at a guy like Kyrie Irving, who is, wow, 98s across the board in his mid range shot and 86s across the board in his 3 point shot. This shows that the player is a great shooter regardless of whether he's doing it off the dribble or whether he's got a hand in his face. Compared to a player like, say, Kyle Korver, who we can see here, he's got a 94 3 point open shot, but only 80 off the dribble. So it takes a substantial hit when he's, you know, not in a catch and shoot situation. We can see the same with like Kevin Love here. Um, and I think like specifically a lot of the big men, like here's Jeff Green. Jeff Green's good when open, but not good with like a hand in his face or off the dribble. So it's good to have this kind of specificity. It does make the attributes better without having to worry about so much as like looking at Steph Curry's 3 point percentage. Like, oh, well, he's not leading the league in 3 point percentage. Yeah, but he's also takes a ton of shots off the dribble, so he's supposed to have a lower 3 point percentage. But we can account for that in the game by not having him. We don't have to give him, say, a 99 3 point rating in order to get him to put up like comparable results, because he's going to have significantly higher contested or moving ratings than the average guy. So I like the addition of those attributes, and I also really enjoy the quick edit mode. Has been an absolute game changer for me. I am editing rosters at about triple the speed that I used to, and we're going to highlight LeBron. Let's go to regular edit player, and I want to go down and edit his attributes. Let's. I want to do this. Where's his pass perception rating? Is that under defense? No, it's not under defense. Where is it? Oh, there. No, no. Oh, there we go. I want to dock that, and okay, finish that. Okay, accept changes in return. Wait a second. No. I also want to edit. Yeah. So this whole process is extremely time consuming, and it made editing rosters a bother. Whereas now we have the quick edit mode, as you can see at the top left or the bottom left corner of your screen. We can edit this mode where we can just scroll through and go nuts adjusting stuff, and you can even do do mass edits and stuff. Edit entire attributes. Oops, hold on. Like you can edit entire columns. Blah 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 blah. And then if I made a mistake or anything, we just discard the changes. And you can also so one of the actual useful tools in addition for all of this is certain players will, basically every player actually, will have a different rating at each position, and sometimes you want to have the player at whatever their highest rated position is. So for, let's say, Kyle Korver, I want to see what he rates at small forward. So rather than click edit player, I can just edit his position real quick. Boom, he goes up to 79. What is he if he was a power forward? Whoop, 76. Whoop, 75. Whoop, 74. Rather than have to go into the player edit menu and figure it out. And then, oh no, I just want him at shooting guard. Discard the changes. Boom. So this is a major game changer for the layout. It's super efficient. And my only qualm about it is it's missing one attribute from the menu. If you ever want to edit a player's reaction time, you have to ironically go into the menu, which is requires. So the 2K reaction time has very low reaction time. That is the only attribute that you fortunately have to go into the menu to adjust, which is fine. I think most people don't even aren't really sure when it's appropriate to adjust that rating, so it's fine that it's missing from this menu. You know, it's a small price to pay. At some point, you do have to go into that menu to adjust something for somebody, right? So the other awesome thing is this isn't just for ratings. You can switch to tendencies and adjust those, because Lord knows that editing tendencies is probably the most fun thing you'll ever do with a 2K roster. Not. Like, this is where I personally hate editing tendencies. I feel like I don't get paid enough to do this. Like, if I'm at the point where I'm editing tendencies, I should be getting paid for this kind of work. Because you're basically just trying to fix. That's where you're. You know, when you're updating rosters, like the attributes, I look at it as like artistry. Like, this is what guys are doing in real life. I'm trying to replicate what is going on in real life. You know, player skill evaluation, all that stuff is fun. Once we get to computer play, like player behavior, um, you know, some of that is obviously related to how they're performing in real life, but a lot of it is just like cleaning up, um, you know, a lot of legacy issues within the game to make the players play a little cleaner, and being able to just adjust that from this menu very quickly and easily, I think is a godsend for all roster editors. So I think this layout's great. You can even adjust badges. You know, just I think you know these guys should have these badges. And then when we go over here, you can just I can like look at stats and be like, oh, LeBron's shooting better, so we'll upgrade his badge from bronze to silver for catch and shoot. Things like that. So this is things that I like about the 2K roster. Just the overall layout and the efficiency in which you can do things. Now we're going to dig a little deeper and go over some of the black marks on the roster. So let's actually exit from this and go back to the regular. All right, so I'm going to highlight the Phoenix Suns because this is still an issue in 2K games for whatever reason. We've had all these technological advances, and we've taken a major back step in the release of these rosters. We previously had like daily roster updates, or at least like weekly, semi-daily roster updates, and now we're getting roster updates every 2 weeks. And we're gonna see here. Here's Mike James on the Phoenix Suns. Mike James was cut by the Phoenix Suns on December 22nd. It is now New Year's Eve, December 31st. 9 days later, he's still here. He was now he was cut to make room for one Isaiah Kanan, who I think is a shooting guard in this game. One Isaiah Kanan. Isaiah Kanan was signed by the team on December 13th, which is by math is hard. 31 minus 13, almost 3 weeks ago. And he's still in the free agent pool, and the guy that he was cut for is still on the Phoenix Suns team. In fact, he's probably starting for said team. We're actually going to go back to the actual 2K roster because I guess there's actually something I want to show you guys. that makes this change, or this like stubbornness by 2K to like live in the past in regards to like the roster execution. So where's Mike James? All right, not starting, but still in the lineup. All right. So the reason why Isaiah Kanan wasn't added to the team is because he would have been the 16th active player on the roster. Meaning, the way that roster rules have kind of actually changed a little bit in the NBA this past season. They had some updates to their collective bargaining agreement. So now we have these two-way contract players, and we have an NBA team is still allowed 15 players on the main roster, and these two-way players are more or less halfway guys. So like realistically, it's 17 players, but it's still 15 max on the main, right? So whenever this has been an issue before. If you recall, earlier in the year, Jarrett Jack of the New York Knicks, he was missing for close to a month, even though he was starting for the team, and it was because he was the 16th guy. They had 15, and they got around this. They added him to the roster because they used what was called the hardship exception, um, which is basically there were too many guys on the team that were hurt, and he was there to fill, to provide an exemption for the team. And as soon as somebody got healthy, uh, a player needed to be cut. You have to go back down to your minimum 15. So Jack was missing for a month, and this was the reason that they didn't add Kanan to the Suns, is because he was signed under the exception rule, and uh, and what's ultimately resulted from that is the like they once the exemption ended, they cut Mike James to keep Kanan on the roster, but here we still have Mike James on the roster. So they didn't make that switch, but they actually have a solution to this in the game, which I'm going to show you. Not with the Suns. I think, can I do it with the Mavericks? One, two. No, they only have three injured players. I'll just injure somebody on the Suns actually, so we can show this example. Let's say Greg Monroe is hurt, so let's give him an injury. Okay. So, oh, they actually did have four guys injured, because Devin Booker is still hurt in the roster, even though Devin Booker came back from injury. I'd say about a week ago. All right. Fix the rotations, whatever. So we're going to go to Kanan. Wherever he may be. There we go. And assign him to the Suns. Now, normally, I don't think this would work. Let's try assigning him to the Spurs. Nope, you can't, because you can't have more than 15 players. But let's assign him to the Suns. A team can have at most 15 players on its roster during the season. Sure. So that doesn't work. Now let's get creative. We're going to say that you are a Euro. Oh, well, actually, that's what I was going to show you, is the hardship is a contract type that you can actually give. So for now, let's actually Eurostash Dudley, just so we can get Kanan on the roster. You can see how this is quite the annoying workaround, by the way. You got to play tricks on the game in order to allow you to do your thing. All right, so now we can put Kanan on the Suns because we pretended momentarily that Jared Dudley is playing in Europe. Which, can we just undo that? Or do we have to change the guy to hardship. No, okay. Alright, so let's go to Canaan. And nobody, I guarantee you, nobody knew about this. So I hopefully that I've taught y'all a neat little roster trick that has not been available to before. I only found out about it like a couple hours ago. So hardship, because that's what he was originally signed as. And look, we got this big capital H signifying hardship, that he is the 16th man. We will bring back Jared Dudley to a core contract. And bam, no issues. We've got Kanan. And count them up, 13 on the active roster, and then 5 in the injury reserve. We've added an extra player to the team's roster without an issue. Now, I was able to figure this out just from kind of playing around. There's no excuse for 2K to not know how to do this in their own game, right? I'm not crazy. So that whole time where Jarrett Jack spent a month not on the team's roster, or when they didn't add or where Isaiah Kanan is still not part of the Suns, this all could have been very easily avoided. So this is something that I wanted to highlight with the capital H. The 2K, they can definitely be more diligent in their roster management. They've given themselves the tools. It's time that they use them. So that's enough on that subject. The other thing that I think is worth going over is there's a lot of attributes that don't get regularly updated. So 2K basically, they take the shooting ratings, the rebound ratings, steals, blocks, assists, like the passing visions based on assists. All of those ratings, they basically copy and paste the data from a website into Excel, and Excel computes what the rating should be, and this is how they update the rosters on a whatever frequency they're going to be updating them. Daily, weekly, monthly, doesn't matter. That's how they do it, and that's why those ratings are consistently updated, and they don't actually adjust other attributes unless they really need to get that player's overall rating up or down, etc. So there's a lot of attributes that just go years without getting updated because they don't have a big impact on a player's overall rating or what have you. So even though I'm highlighting the Nuggets, this is not who I'm really... Actually, there will be examples on the Nuggets, but let's go to the Blazers. So Damian Lillard has an 85 dunk rating, highest on the Portland Trail Blazers. This is a substantial dunk rating. Where is the average? So the position average... Oh no, that's driving layup. Derp. Yeah, driving dunk. Driving dunk. The position average is 50 for point guards. And shooting guard 63, small forward 67, power forward 70, and center 64. So realistically, the average dunk rating is basically a 65 for players who can dunk. And factoring in that a lot of point guards can't dunk, that's why that number comes out to 50. But he's an 85 dunk rating. So my issue is on the dunk rating. 2 years ago, 2K was already not updating the dunk ratings. And since that time, all the players in the game still have the same dunk rating. And it doesn't take a genius to know that over a 4 or 5 year span, players might have changes in their athletic ability. So Damian Lillard is a player who, in 2015, he dunked the ball 30 times, which is a respectable amount for a point guard. It wasn't quite Russell Westbrook territory, but it was still pretty good. He dunked the ball 30 times, which was good for 2.5% of his field goals attempted. Since that time, he's dunked the ball 19 times, which accounts for 0% of his field goal attempts over the last 2.5 years. So, 2015, he dunked 30 times. Since then, 2.5 years, total of 19. This says that his dunking performance should go down. To be clear, he's dunked 4 times this year, and he dunked 4 times all of last year. Last year, I believe he dunked on 0.4% of all of his shots, and this year he's up to 0.7%. So he's basically double. He's dunking at double the rate that he did last year, but that's still 1/3 of the rate that he was dunking in 2015 when he had this 85 dunk rating. So this is like a premier example of a player who can definitely get knocked down. And I have Lillard on my team. Like I can dunk probably once or twice a game with him pretty easily. So he just doesn't finish like this anymore. And if you go like across the league, that's a guy who's overrated. Now let's go back to the Nuggets. So we have Jamal Murray at point guard. He's got a 40 dunk rating. Want to know how many times Jamal Murray's dunked? Jamal Murray dunked 17 times last year, which is good for 2.6% of his field goal attempts. Remember that Lillard plays, about 3,000 minutes a year. So he got his 30. He basically averaged 30 dunks in like 3,000 minutes. Math is hard, but you guys can figure it out. Murray played like 1,100 minutes and he had 17 dunks. So that's why, percentage-wise, they're still on par. 17 dunks, still pretty respectable for a point dunk. He can barely dunk. In fact, I didn't look up the stats for Emmanuel Mudiay, but they probably dunked at a similar rate. And Mudiay's got a 70 rating, Murray's got a 40 rating. So last year, Murray dunked 17 times. This year, he's got 9 dunks, also 2.1% of his field goal attempts. So in the past year, in Murray's career, he's dunked 26 times. Over that same span, Lillard has dunked 8 times. And yet there's a 45-point discrepancy between their dunk ratings. Murray is the guy who I should be able to dunk with in my team, if anything, and he's the guy who needs it because he's not nearly the shooter that Lillard is. He's a slasher. So Murray's an example, and then let's go over to shooting guards. We've got Gary Harris with a 50 dunk rating, and Gary Harris is actually a pretty good dunker. He's dunked on 5.9% of his career field goal attempts, which is above average for a shooting guard. He dunked 38 times last year, 6.6% of his field goal attempts, and this year he's dunked 21 times. So in the past year and a half, he's dunked 59 times. 59 times, and he's got a 50 dunk rating. Whereas Damian Lillard's dunked 8 times and has an 85 dunk rating. So these are this is a serious issue. Like the dunk rating it doesn't impact the overall rating a ton, but it certainly is one of the most impactful in-game ratings. Anybody who's been dunked on ad nausea by like a Blake Griffin or whoever knows how important the dunk rating is to a slasher's performance. And clearly the Nuggets are a team that they're a lot more athletic in their backcourt than 2K gives them credit for. Part of that is a small market bias where they update a lot of teams like the Lakers way more frequently than teams like the Nuggets. It is what it is. That's always going to be a thing. Understandably, you got to follow the money. People are paying more to play with the Lakers than they are with the Nuggets or whatever. So it is what it is. I try to bring attention to the entire NBA to give a realistic experience across the board. But that's one example. Here's another example. It gets even worse. So Delon Wright has a 30 dunk rating. He can't dunk, period. And yet he's dunked 10 times in his career. 3.4% of his field goal attempts have been dunks for his career. He's played about 1,000 minutes in his career due to injuries, but he's always been good for, 4 dunks a year, basically, on average. And here he is, not at all able to dunk. If anything, and he's 6'5", and he's got a lower dunk rating than like Fred VanVleet is 6 feet tall and not an athlete. Like, he will never dunk in the NBA. And Delon Wright apparently never will in 2K in 2K Sports version of the NBA at least. So there's an example. And then my last example for now is going to be Paul George. So Paul George, hey, he's got an 85 dunk rating, great dunker, right? Everybody remembers him as a great dunker. So if you remember, Paul George suffered that gruesome leg injury. So during the Olympics, when they were it was a scrimmage in Las Vegas or something like that, and pretty well known. Like, Gordon Hayward's about to go through the same thing once he comes back. So Paul George, the first 5 years of his career, he dunked 224 times, which is 6.9% of his field goal attempts, 7%. That's a better number. Those are great numbers, way better than everything we've seen across the board, way better than Lillard. He's a guy that, he deserved that 85 rating. Then he had his leg injury, right? So what happened? His athleticism declined, right? He doesn't take as many risks, I guess we'll say. So in the last 3 years, he's dunked only 76 times, 2.5% of his field goal attempts. So previously, before the leg injury, 7%, and now over the last 3 years, 2.5%. 2K hasn't updated his dunk rating since that time. He was, this is prime athleticism, Paul George, with an 85 dunk rating. He's not that player anymore. I would say maybe 75 at tops. Still giving him a little bit of rep. Definitely not no 85. That's just how quick. He shouldn't be throwing down multiple posters a game, which you will absolutely get with him if you decide to take him and run with the Thunder. So just wanted to highlight that as one of like the major examples of like a marquee player that had a significant drop in their athletic ability. And moving on. So we talked a little earlier about the intangibles rating, the overall rating. And spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about the intangibles rating and its relation to the overall rating. So where's the best place to highlight this? Well, I could probably actually just go through the entire league. So the intangibles rating is kind of, it's a rating that nobody really knows what it does. The guys at 2K Lab tested this rating, and they found that it kind of performs similarly to the clutch rating, which otherwise doesn't exist in the game. So it's the clutch rating. Guys, like they were saying in the closing, in clutch situations, players were shooting better if they had a higher intangibles rating. I think this rating also has an effect on like system proficiency, and I could be wrong, by the way. I don't mean to misinform, but this is just kind of something I like loosely observed, but didn't personally test myself. That the system proficiency ratings and like uh, the coach ratings and stuff, players are going to perform better based on their intangibles rating in relation to like what your coach's game plan is. Is basically what I'm trying to say, at least in theory. So we've got this intangibles rating, which has kind of like a gray area impact on the game. But what isn't gray is the major impact that it has on the overall rating. So we just tanked Raymond Felton from a 92 to a 25, and he dropped 5 points of overall. And this for an attribute that, again, may not have a significant impact on his actual effectiveness. You know, we could go to, let's say Raymond Felton found the fountain of youth and became a phenomenal dunker. This would be relevant to his in-game performance, right? If Raymond Felton suddenly became Vince Carter, he apparently only gets marginally better than what he originally was, right? So the intangibles has a major impact on the overall rating, and this is where I kind of take like great issue with the methodology that 2K Sports has used, because I've seen examples throughout the entire roster of like where players only have a high intangibles rating or a low intangibles rating because they were targeting a specific overall rating for that player. And to me, that's just lazy roster editing because there are so many other attributes that clearly could be updated. I just showed you the dunk rating; those haven't been updated in years, and there are other attributes like shot contest and hustle, etc., that you could be adjusting, but they largely are not, and instead are, you know, you can check anytime they release a roster update, anytime somebody's going up, they usually are also buffing their intangibles rating, and that boost, the intangibles rating, is usually accounting for at least half of that player's boost. If the player went up 3 points, chances are 2 of it is due to a boost in intangibles, etc. So, like, a lot of the more egregious examples, the most egregious one I can think of is when we go to the Golden State Warriors, right? And this is how I first realized that like something might be amiss. Is right now Draymond Green has a 90 intangibles rating, but that wasn't always the case. I think he started the season with like a 70, but they probably docked other ratings and then boosted him to a 90 to keep his overall steady, right? So like Omri Caspi at a 95. When you think of Omri Caspi, do you think of him as a player who's got more intangibles than Draymond Green? Probably not. And it's silly to me because what that means is Omri Caspi is going to perform much lower than what his 75 overall signifies. You know, if you look at the rest of his attributes, they're all pretty mediocre across the board. And it's just lazy to me that you would give him a 95, and yet here we see a couple clicks over, he's got a 41 strength. He's a small forward that actually plays a reasonable amount of power forward. You know, what would happen if we bumped him up, let's say 10 points? Well, let's see what happens. When does he go up? Boom. He clicks up not too far after that. So, you know, if something else, oh look, 52 shot contest. You know, well, he's been defending really well for the Warriors, so let's bump him up a little bit. Oh look, help defense, 43. Low post defense, 44. Well, he defends power forwards, so let's bump there, and let's bump there. And before you know it, he'll actually have the rating he deserves without having to arbitrarily boost his intangibles rating. So you have Omri Caspian at a 95. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Andre Iguodala at a 30 intangibles. When I think of the word intangibles, like Andre Iguodala might as well have his face on the in the dictionary. He's a 30 intangibles. That's ridiculous when you like conceptually think about it. So, not free agency. Where's all players? And I guess we have to scroll down past all these guys that don't exist. All right, so 30 is there's Okara White at 30. 30 is the absolute lowest rating given to any NBA player. We've got Okara White, Eric McCree, Kyle Collinsworth, couple two-way players, Derek White, and then on the legend teams we've got Chris Dudley. Here we've got Andre Iguodala with the same intangibles rating as G Leaguers. And then go figure, another guy who screams intangibles is Shane Battier, also with a 30. And this is only because you see that 80 overall for Battier. Well, they didn't want him to have like an 85, basically. All of his attributes are very high. Obviously, he's one of the better defensive players in NBA history. And he's got high ratings in various attributes that are going to give him a high overall rating, and they don't want him to appear to be a high value, they don't want him to be classified as like an all-star level player, even though he's on a classic team. And this is just nonsense to me. Like Andre Iguodala, clearly a lot of 90, like high defensive ratings. Just because he doesn't produce for the Golden State Warriors, like, he only averages whatever he averages, 8 points, 9 points, 7.6 points per game, but he's a six man on that team. He would start for a lot of other teams in the NBA. He's a great player, even though he doesn't put up like great numbers. And rather than reduce some of these other attributes, maybe he doesn't deserve this 93 shot contest. Maybe that should be the attribute that goes down. Rather than investigate and really get to the bottom of what's off about these player attributes, 2K just takes the easy way out and applies a quick fix. Keep it moving. Get the rating, get that OVR to where we want it, and just keep it moving. So Iguodala's the most egregious example, certainly in the game. You could go across every single team and find something like laughable about like regarding the intangibles rating, just the inconsistency with which it's applied. Like the way that 2K this attribute has an actual function in the game, but 2K treats it as if it does not have any function whatsoever, aside from operating as a band-aid for overall. Like, let's start at the Sixers. You've got rookie Ben Simmons at a 95, JJ Redick at a 95, sure, whatever. Joel Embiid, 98, James McAdoo, 88, and then we saw at the bottom Robert Covington, 40. What? Covington's the glue guy for that team. He's their best defensive player. I think he rates he's the number one player in the NBA, or a small forward in the NBA, in defensive real plus minus, which is basically plus minus factoring in basically it isolates plus minus is like raw plus minus is a very volatile stat. It's not always very informative because a lot of it hinges on your teammates. If uh, like Andre Roberson will have a great plus minus because he plays with three other all stars, right? Whereas a guy who like doesn't play with a bunch of all stars, whoever's the starting shooting guard of like a lottery team is going to have a bad plus minus just because like they play for a bad team. So RPM tries to isolate teammate factors, and Covington's grades as the most impactful defender at small forward in the NBA, and he's got a 40 intangibles rating for NBA 2K. You've got Rashad Vaughn, 84. What? Who knows? Who knows? Denzel Valentine, 90. Whatever that's based on. He was terrible last season. Dwayne Wade, 50. Jay Crowder, 50. Oh, and J.R. Smith, 95. Because if there's anything we know about J.R. Smith, he's a great teammate. Has great shot selection, everything that is embodied by intangibles, etc. The only reason he's got a 95 is because otherwise he would have like a 70 rating, and then he wouldn't start for the team in my GM, etc. So that's the intangibles attribute. Um, Pretty bad, and in my roster, I kind of approached it a different way. So I think let's segue over to my roster file and kind of show uh, the steps that I've been taking to fix what 2K has been doing. So let's actually head over to the Warriors. And I have Iguodala at an 80 intangibles, but an 81 overall. And if you're wondering, let's drop him down to a 30. So I've actually downgraded Iguodala's other attributes, but it just so happens that I have him at a high intangibles rating because it actually has a function in the game. And if you'll see here, I actually have a couple guys 99, 90, 80. I actually set up a tiering system for the attribute that basically dictates. I kind of looking at it like guys who your coach would play in the fourth quarter. Are they going to negatively impact the team if they're playing in crunch time? So like a guy like JaVale McGee or Nick Young maybe is not going to be, or Jordan Bell, who's a rookie, is not going to be as consistent as other guys like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. I'm not going to look at clutch factor to like see, oh, well, this guy's shooting this during the clutch situations. Those are just small sample sizes. We just know that these guys are money during. You don't have to worry about having them in the fourth quarter. So that's kind of my approach towards the intangibles rating. But now also going over my roster, I've updated player positions and stuff relative to what guys are actually doing in NBA, where they're actually playing in the NBA, and you'll see here I've got LeBron James at power forward. He's a 94 overall. In 2K's roster, he's a 98, and you might be saying, "Oh my God, Rashidi, why did you drop LeBron's rating so much?" Well, I didn't actually. It's actually I've improved LeBron's attributes. He is a 99 in my roster, but because I have his position at power forward, his overall rating drops significantly. And this is a major problem that NBA 2K is going to have to address. This has been an issue for about 15 years. This is not an old issue. They've had plenty of time to fix this, and they just have not. The power forward formula in NBA 2K has always been god awful. It does not properly like evaluate their skill sets, the skill sets of the modern NBA power forward. It still thinks that every power forward is Charles Oakley or Dennis Rodman, and that's just not the case anymore. James here at power forward, like, let's go down the list. Giannis Antetokounmpo, here he is at a 90, but realistically, he's a 94. There's no reason why these guys should be dropping off, because we have more small forwards making the conversion to power forward than ever. If anything, the line between what makes a small forward and a power forward is becoming very blurred. You know, and Antetokounmpo isn't even a good shooter. It's just the other attributes that 2K just isn't giving enough weight to. You know, I haven't figured out exactly which attributes need, a significant realignment. You know, I don't get paid to figure that out. 2K's known about this issue. I've personally told members of the 2K sports team that this has been an issue. It just hasn't been addressed. You know, it wasn't addressed for all of Dirk Nowitzki's prime. That's why Dirk Nowitzki always had inflated rebound ratings to compensate for, to basically keep his overall rating high, because why fix a formula when we can just apply a band-aid? I don't think that the formula, like whenever they add a new attribute, they have to recalculate the formula. So why not just use that as a time to like really think about, oh, maybe we should adjust, how certain things are factored in. But maybe that doesn't actually happen, because I'm going to show you something. So we've got LeBron at 94 overall. He's been shooting it pretty well this year, right? 88s across the board. I have him here at. Let's go to edit, and let's drop his off dribble 3-point shot. Well, so we dropped that significantly, and LeBron barely changed, right? Now let's switch him to small forward and see. Alright, so clearly he went down 2 points. We can see that with small forwards, it matters a little more. Alright, now let's go to the contested 3-point rating. Wait for it. Wait for it. Oh, there we go. Same deal. Had barely any effect. And as anybody who plays 2K knows, the 3-point rating is one of the most important attributes in the entire game, and here it barely has any effect on a power forward's overall rating. And you can go across the board and find I think what keeps LeBron's rating down the most is, I think that defensive rebounding is still the most heavily rated attribute for a power forward, and that's an easy fix. Like, we have you can just look at the rebound rates for other power forwards in the NBA to see that they've been declining, and that you should reweight this. Like, if we gave... Alright, well, it actually doesn't even improve LeBron. So I don't know exactly what attributes are not being factored in. Maybe it's that small forward is just giving too much of a boost. for various attributes. I personally don't know. It's something that 2K needs to fix though, because this problem's only going to multiply. We have Lupo made the conversion from small forward to power forward this year. Uh, let's uh, let's go across the board. Marcus Morris for the Celtics. Where is he? Here I have him at power forward. He's a small forward in 2K's roster. Chandler Parsons has been coming off the bench exclusively as a power forward. James Johnson and Justice Winslow, both power forwards for the Miami Heat. Both were small forwards up until this season. Actually, James Johnson was a power forward earlier, but Justice Winslow just made the conversion. Luke Babbitt, small forward in 2K's roster. Or actually, I think they recently updated him to a power forward, but only because they gave him a 95 intangibles. I have him at 70. They have him at 95 in order to mask their own formula. Marvin Williams used to be a small forward. He was kind of one of the first guys that switched over to kind of start this movement. Kyle Kuzma is basically a small forward playing power forward. He's comparable to Al Harrington, I think. Who, if you recall, with the Pacers, he was a small forward earlier in his career, and he progressed to power forward, and then was playing center at like the end of his career at 6'9". Aaron Gordon played small forward last year. He's a power forward. Harrison Barnes has played a lot of four for the Mavericks. Rondé Hollis Jefferson, I've got him at power forward. He's a small forward though for 2K. Hey, what's up, Violence Tube? You can get a shout out, but not a shootout. Thaddeus Young used to be a small forward, now is a power forward. Darius Miller for the Pelicans is also formerly a small forward. He used to be a four. Dante Cunningham's kind of a swing. He'll play wherever based on injuries. Tobias Harris, there's a big one. Tobias Harris, small forward, came in as a small forward in the NBA, and now he's been playing four for a couple of years. 2K still got him at the three. Or I think recently converted him to the four. I can't recall. Rudy Gay. Rudy Gay is a big one. He's a power forward for the Spurs off the bench. They've got Kawhi Leonard as their main small forward, and Kyle Anderson is basically his backup when Kawhi's healthy. So the only way for Rudy to get time is to back up Aldridge. And obviously Carmelo Anthony has been playing a ton of four for the OKC Thunder. Taj Gibson is basically the last pure 90s power forward in the NBA. And Alfred Camino, small forward that is now a power forward. Draymond Green, probably the best example in the NBA. Kevin Durant plays a ton of four for this team also. He's played more four than he has three this year, which makes sense given all the wings that Golden State has. So overall, I gave you guys a lot of examples, and the Cavs actually have, besides LeBron, they also have Jeff Green, who has been playing power forward and center this year, and 2K's got him at small forward, and he's been a power forward for a while in his career. That's why Melo is like a 79. That's correct. That is why I have Melo is a 79 in my roster. In 2K's roster, he's still an 82. But as we see, once we edit his position, boom, he jumps 4 points. So this is like I consider this a major issue because it's going to mess with it messes with the my GM and my career modes because players are not going to be playing the correct positions. Players are not it's just going to create unrealistic experiences. The teams that space the floor are going to succeed the best in the NBA. And if your teams are picking up power forwards that aren't spacing the floor, then anytime you get paired up against a team like the Knicks, who have Porzingis at the four, you're just going to get abused. You know, so that's a major issue that I want 2K to address. I don't know that they will anytime soon. Clearly, they've had a lot of time to figure this out, and they're running out of time, as far as I'm concerned. So, two other things I want to go over. Play types. So I actually updated the play types for two teams in my roster, as that's the only, not for any particular reason. It's just the two that I got to so far. Which you can find just by cycling through the menus. You don't have to go into. Normally, you would have to go into edit player, blah blah blah. But now with quick edit, you can get to this. So I updated play types for the Knicks because I did like a computer sim, not a computer sim, but I let the computer play itself just to like watch and kind of see like the changes. Did the changes that I made have any impact? And I noticed that like Lance Thomas was going on one quite a bit, and I was like, what is this? Is he like? Why does Lance Thomas think he's like mellow? It's actually taking shots away from Porzingis. Like the go-to guys on the team were practically Cantor and Lance Thomas. So I go to uh, I'm gonna back out and go to the 2K roster and show you what they have for their playbooks or their play types for these guys. I was told that I didn't confirm this myself, but I was told that um, 2K hasn't updated the play types in over a year. This actually blew me away a little bit because I had seen that in 2K16 that they updated play types at the end of the season. It was like the last thing that they had done for their roster update, and I guess that all that because they take all the season data and figure out what plays everybody did. That's a good time to make that change. So I figured, oh, they're just going to do that at the end of every season. So if they didn't do that at the end of 2K17, that means that these play types are like 2 years out of date. And we've seen with all the roster movement that goes on in the NBA now, like some of those are just like hilariously bad. So we're looking at the Knicks, and let's go the other way because we'll get it faster. So here's what they got for the various Knicks players. So we've got Lance Thomas. I was saying that he was going on one a little too much. Well, his priority number one play type is post up high. He's a low volume offensive player, and you know, he's getting one plays called for him, which is nonsense. He's not that guy. He's never been that guy. Even when they might have thought he was that guy, he was never that guy. And he's basically a corner shooter for the Knicks. They don't run any plays for him. They got Porzingis, but they, the it, it's unfortunate. Like my good friend the Czar works on the offensive systems for all these teams, right? And he puts a ton of time in to get these teams to run these sets that they run in real life. And when you have crap like this, it just undermines all the man's work. And this is, like when we go to the credits section for the game, it's a collaborative effort. There's probably like 500 names on the list, maybe more, maybe 1,000. A lot of people work on 2K. It's a team effort. And when one hand doesn't know what the other's doing, it can make somebody else's job harder. You know, does the czar know that he's working on the Knicks offense to get them to run more realistically, but the plays that they're running are not actually like they're just running plays that they shouldn't be running. They might be running them like the Knicks run them, but they're running them for the absolute wrong players, which kind of like defeats the purpose, right? So there's Lance Thomas getting post up opportunities. And let's see what else I can find. Kylo Quinn getting like low post opportunities. There was one that kind of stuck out to me. I'm not remembering it. Well, actually, all right. So let's actually. So the other team that I did was the Oklahoma City Thunder, and this was because I got this by request because somebody said that the Thunder just weren't playing the way that the Thunder play. On top of that, before one of those reasons why is if we go to Andre Robertson, for whatever reason, he's got play initiator active, which means that he's gonna bring the ball up and act like a point guard sometimes, which is ridiculous. Which is ridiculous because he's not that player at all. He's one of the worst on-ball players in the NBA. He's a shooting guard by technicality. He's really a small forward. He's got a career assist percentage of 4.5%, which is bad. Probably the lowest rate for a starting shooting guard in the NBA. He does not handle the ball. So we see he's got this play initiator. Let's see what he's got for his plays. Pick and roll wing. He's running pick and roll plays, but he never handles the ball in real life. So this is leading to like Roberson's taking the ball out of Russell Westbrook's hands because he's got player initiator combined with pick and roll wing. In my roster, I took away this and I took away this. Like the only plays he's got are cutter. He's got 3 plays, and that's what he deserves because he is garbo offensively. Like he can't shoot, so you're not running shooting plays for him. He can't dribble, so you're not giving him anything to do off the bounce. Just maybe he might get that alley oop every now and then. This is perfect for him. You don't need 2 pages of plays for just one. He just needs one menu. So that was one of the things that I fixed. Where is so Paul George is another interesting one. He's got guard post up. And part of this might be because he's on a new team now, right? So these are his play types from when he was on the Pacers, but now he's a member of the Thunder. So on the Thunder, he doesn't post up because they have Melo to post up. He's only posted up like 2.5% of the time. 2.5% of his possessions are post ups. That's not enough to have to warrant this being a play type. And you might notice that isolation's not on this list. Isolation is Paul George's top play type, basically, or at least his top on-ball play type, and it's not even on the list. Instead, we have guard post-up. Roberson recorded 9 assists consistently under 2K's roster. LOL. Yeah, that's terrible. Steven Adams post up low instead of like he doesn't use he's posted up 24 times total this year, whereas pick and rolls substantially more. Like this should just be gone. And when you factor all of each player has something that you could adjust, and like this is just like things that you don't even need to adjust attributes or tendencies. This plays such a significant part on the game, and it kind of shows that they haven't been updated, any time recently, certainly. And this is something that when you run a my career or something, and you get stuck with a team, and then you're like, well, I hate my team. They don't play like the way they play in real life. Well, this is part of the reason why. And then you're just stuck. Like, I got to demand a trade from this team. Because the computer is dumb. God forbid Nick Collison ever gets a post up. So that's the play types and the significant impact that they have on the game. Um, let's go into badges. I got told. I think 2K reported they updated the badges, like not in this last roster update, but the previous one, so about a month ago by now probably. I don't know offhand what badges that they updated, but certainly there's a lot of badges. Um, they're kind of what this is like information overload to me. Like, it's on top of having like 70 attributes to edit, tendencies, etc. Now you also have a full menu of badges, and they all have different tiers, etc. It's very time consuming for anybody, not just roster editors, for 2K themselves to even address this on like more than like a yearly basis. But there's things that you can do to actually kind of save yourself time. So I've got a treat for you guys. I'm actually going to edit the Putback King badges for the New York Knicks and kind of show. We'll see how long it takes. So I have loaded up already on my computer. Stats.nba.com, and you can go to. They have a couple. Go to sortable player stats, and they'll have a thing where it says players, and then general, and then something else. Click general. And by the way, I'm streaming from my PS4 rather than from my computer. If this was on my computer, I'd be able to screen share all of this. This would be interesting. I wouldn't have to verbalize it. So you go to play type, and then you can sort by play type. And I looked up putbacks. Putbacks is a play type, and these are actually these play types actually are where 2K gets their data from for these various badges. Like Putback King, Pick and Roller, they will look at roll man stats, figure out who had the best stats, and those guys get golds. The guys who are medium on the stats get bronzes, etc. Pick Dodger, they will take pick and roll defense and look at that. And if you ever wondered, like, well, why does that guy have gold Pick Dodger? It's because they recorded a high rating. Like, these are part of the Synergy Stats package that is now free on NBA.com. You can get way more detailed stats if you pay for Synergy, which was the case like 5 years ago. Synergy used to be a private thing, but now it's part of the NBA. I think they have stats that get uploaded into the game itself, or at least the game has something maybe when you start a season. I don't know. So we're going to look at the Putback King. So I have loaded up, and they also have not just this season, but like previous seasons. So I have loaded up the 2017 season. Let me move my mic over a little bit, since I am now working on my computer rather than at my PS4. So just to go over what the kind of data that I'm looking at. So let's say Joakim Noah. Joakim Noah. Whoops, there goes my mic. All right, that's a good spot for it. All right, Joakim Noah. 35% of his possessions were putbacks. That mark was actually the most in the NBA. And this is actually, so we can, use this to. So that's not to say that Noah was getting way more putbacks than everybody else, because remember, 35% of his possessions. He's a low usage player, so he just wasn't, taking any other shots in like the half court offense or anything like that. He was getting the majority of his offense just off of offensive rebounds. In past years, he would have had. Where do we go? Yeah, all right. That's actually all right. Only three guys on the Knicks have the putback king badge. In previous years with the Bulls during his prime, he definitely would have had one of these badges, and I'm sure he did. But with the Knicks last year, we all know that Noah performed very poorly, and it's because 35% of his possessions were putbacks, but he only scored a point. His points per possession was 0.85, less than a point per possession. This was good for 15th percentile in the NBA. So even though he got a ton of opportunities, he was not converting on them, and therefore does not deserve the badge. So we can use that as kind of like a baseline for like, well, just because a guy, it's a combination of volume versus actual effectiveness. So looking at the guys who actually do have the badge, and Enes Kanter's actually a member of the OKC Thunder last season. So let me switch I have it filtered by team to switch back and forth easily. So Enes Kanter last season, he had 167 putback possessions, which was 17% of his offense, 1.14 points per possession, which was good for 63rd percentile in the NBA. So maybe not the gold badge, but certainly like quality results, silver or better. And you can argue that he should be gold if he put up great results in prior seasons also. Like those are like the best on the Thunder by far. Steven Adams, by comparison, was 17% of his possessions, but it's only 0.94 PPP, which is 27th percentile. So significantly, even though they had the same amount of possessions and opportunities, Adams was significantly worse than Kanter at converting, which makes sense. Kanter's a great offensive player, Adams is not. So Adams got the badge. And Michael Beasley, he didn't play a ton last year. I'm not even going to go. What team did he even play for? Milwaukee? Milwaukee, 4.5%, 1.13, 61st percentile. So, like, this, like, 60th percentile kind of marker we can see is generally, like, I think where the badges usually start for a lot of these attributes. 50% and up, I think. They start getting bronze and stuff. So, that's just some of the things that I've observed. So, and then Porzingis. Let's go back to the Knicks. These guys all played for different teams last year. Jeez. All right, Porzingis, actually, here's where we got some bias in play. Porzingis last year, only 6.5% of his possessions were putbacks. Low percentage. He is a higher volume. Actually, he wasn't even a high volume offensive player last year because he played with Melo. Kanter was a higher volume player last year. So, Porzingis only 6.5%. 0.91 points per possession, 23rd percentile in the NBA. This doesn't tell me, like, he doesn't seem like he deserves this badge. This is something that I feel like they gave to him either because they saw, like, some highlight dunk, that was once in a blue moon, and it doesn't actually, reflect the level of play that he puts forth. So, or it could be a fluke. Maybe he posted something great during his rookie season. Maybe this badge came from his rookie season and hasn't been updated in, 2 years. I don't know offhand. But these are the results that these guys posted last year, which resulted in gold, bronze for those three guys. And not discounting, there's a bunch of guys with no badge, and you can make an argument on this data for, let's say, Kyle O'Quinn. Kyle O'Quinn, 16.7%, 1.16, 67th percentile. Probably deserved the badge. And maybe Hernan Gomez also led the team in putback possessions with 107. He was 17% frequency, 1.16, 67th percentile. So O'Quinn and Hernan Gomez are guys that you could reasonably give the putback king badge to. Let's update this now for the current NBA season and see what's changed. Well, quite a bit. Enes Kanter, 22% of his possessions are putbacks. 1.38 points per possession, which is 87th percentile in the NBA. So, if you didn't think he deserved a gold last year, he definitely deserves one this year. It's totally fine with this badge. Michael Beasley, 6.9%, 1.0 points per possession, 32nd percentile. He's like borderline bronze. It's like we can still give it to him. It's still earlier in the year. Like, there's only 25 possessions for Michael Beasley, so his efficiency isn't really that big of a deal. What we're really looking for earlier in the year is like the frequency, and then adjusting based on the efficiency, right? So I'm okay letting that bronze slide for now. He could be doing better, but he's certainly not. Uh, he, not 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 a good offensive rebounder. Because when we watch the games, also he's had some pretty good offensive rebounds, like notably against the Thunder and the Celtics in those games where he dropped 30 back-to-back games or twice in 3 games, something like that. Uh, so Kyle O'Quinn, following off of last season, this season 14.5%, 1.46 points per possession, 94th percentile in the NBA. Just as good as Cantor, actually better, at least in terms of efficiency, has no badge. So I think that based on last season and this season's performance, Kyle O'Quinn gets a gold putback king badge. And Porzingis not performing well once again. 27 possessions total, 3.7% of his possessions. 0.67 points per possession. That is terrible. He's in the 6th percentile in terms of efficiency. Last year he didn't deserve a gold. This year you just can't justify it, period. I'm taking it away completely. And looking down the list, Herman Gomez hasn't played a ton, but his volume is still there. I think I'm going to give Hernan Gomez a bronze based on last season. And hey, he's got a badge. Go figure. Other than that, everything checks out. Now, I spent a reasonable amount of time discussing this on the stream. This was actually very, a pretty data for 2 years, and compared it. And I felt like each of these decisions was kind of clear cut. I could probably do the entire league in the span of like 90 minutes, let's say. Like between an hour and 2 hours, I could adjust an entire badge league wide. That's 500 players. This is something that is easy and fun. I actually enjoy doing this kind of work. It's informative. It teaches me a little bit more about just the NBA teams and players and whatnot. This is something that 2K Sports could likewise be doing. They have more than one guy working on their roster. So there's no reason why they can't have somebody reviewing badges more than once a year. And finally, the last thing I'm going to touch on is how do I get out of here? Coach ratings. So we actually have you can go adjust all the staff ratings. I actually took the liberty of all the head coach and the assistant coach are all accurate. Assistant coach is usually like a former player or something, and 2K seems to have the rights for like all the assistant coaches and stuff are already here in the game. Everybody else is not. I had to. So I got Scott Perry, the GM. They have like generic named guys for the GMs in the game, I went through and at least adjusted all of the GMs to provide just a little bit more authenticity. So I haven't played my career or anything like that, but anytime there's a conversation with somebody, how cool would it be if it was like an actual person that exists in real life rather than someone that is just like a complete fraud and doesn't belong. So I did adjust those, and the one thing I've also been working on is the actual coach ratings, like the offense, defense, and potential. Oh, one more thing. Let's view candidates. So we've got one with Michael Stoffer, the lead ratings guy for NBA 2K, made himself a coach in the roster, who actually is usually the first guy who gets hired during as soon as like a coach gets fired in a season, as he's got great co-ratings, etc. So nice little Easter egg. He put himself in the game, and I think you can see actually his I guess his brother or somebody related to him. He's from Cleveland, so as a shout out to I guess a member of his family, he's got them as like the lead trainer on the team. So I thought that was a nice touch, and it had me thinking like, how can what kind of cool things could I impart onto the team? So I got Brian Mazik as the head scout for the Chicago Bulls, and one where is he? Nelson Blake the second is the head scout, and I got the czar in here somewhere. Just to give a little shout out to my Sim Nation brethren. Why can't I, right? And I think people who enjoy 2K rosters would also find it cool to potentially interact with those folk during their seasons and whatnot. But anyway, regarding the coach ratings, I'm going to actually show you exit without saving. Oh, I should have actually saved because I want to keep those badge ratings, but go to play now. Alright, so here we've got all these team rankings and whatnot. Like the Knicks are 18th in offense, 25th in defense, 23rd overall. So the coach ratings actually have an impact on these ratings. You can't actually see the ratings themselves though, they just show you the rankings. So I'm going to actually show you where you can find the actual ratings. And we're going to start not a play now, my GM. Go to my league, and let's load my roster, why not? Start, select all. Hey, that's another great time saver rather than having to go through and highlight every single team. Nice addition to the game. Auto generate. Okay, so now we're going to go to options, which is a weird place to find this. And we're going to go to position settings. Likewise, a weird place to find this. Boom! Look at that. We got the team ratings, the actual numerical team ratings for this team. I can't switch to the other teams, as this is current team, the 76ers. You can see in the top right, you can switch between teams by moving the right stick. So unfortunately, to check each team's rating, you have to manually go in, back out, and switch. It was a little time consuming, but it gives you a good idea of where each team is at. So, at least better than the team rankings. So I was actually able to calculate that Each letter grade for the coaches. Let's go to the Nets because this is like an easy example. All right, so I got the Nets at 76 across the board, right? So let's go to front office staff, head coach. All right, so head coach, offense C plus, defense C plus. At default, he's a C in offense and defense. Raising the grade, not a letter grade, but like a plus. So going from C to C plus in offense raises the offensive rating 1 point. Going from a C to a C plus in defense raises the defensive rating 1 point. So, and then raising it to a B minus raises it 2 points, which means raising it from a B is 3 points. So, if a C is let's say C is our standard deviation is 0. A B is +3, an A is +6, and an A plus is going to be 7 points added to that attribute's rating. And conversely, in F would go in the opposite direction, right? It would be -6. There's no F minus, so yeah. All right, so you've got a 7 point range basically, or 14, technically a 13 point range, but a C is the midpoint, right? So let's go to a team like the Warriors or the Spurs. Let's go to the Spurs because they're close. The Spurs have Greg Popovich as their coach, who's an A plus in everything. Ditto for Steve Kerr. I can't even find this thing. Oh, right, options. It's such a weird spot. All right, so Spurs are an A plus team in offense and an A plus in defense. They had 7, which means they had 7 points added to both of their ratings. And am I off the air or back on? I might have dropped out. PS4 gave me a notification about the internet connection, so sorry if there's any issues in the actual stream itself. But this is going to be ending soon anyway. This is kind of my last point that I wanted to cover. Spurs actual, like based on their attributes and everything, they're actually a 90 offense and an 88 defense, but the coach rating actually pumps them up. And these team ratings actually matter in simulation. So having a better coach will actually affect your simulation results. And in like 2K's case, in their roster, they have a lot of bogus coach ratings. So there's going to be a little more variance in team performance. And a lot of it is kind of like they just like don't update. Like they've got they've got the Spurs and the Warriors as like A pluses across the board, just because it's the Spurs and the Warriors. Um, like Jeff Hornacek's a C across the board as the Knicks coach, and that may not necessarily be the case. Like he might be a C plus in something, or a C. Maybe he should be a C minus defensively. It's kind of tough to say at this point. And I just feel that they could be a lot cleaner. Like I can't. I hate navigating once I'm in my league. I just want to back out. Exit. Options. Back to the. Oh, okay. I can't check the. I have to go into edit roster for them. Jeez. Oh no, not the not my roster. Ugh. Whoops. Roster creator, create roster. There we go. Download the 2K roster. I've given them more downloads today than anybody else. All right, so like Hornacek. Oh, actually a C minus across the board. So that's why when we showed you that the Knicks score before, their rankings are low because they have Hornacek as like a bad coach. He's actually got a bad badge too. What is that? Or no, it's a good badge. Never mind. It's a former player. The red ones are bad. I thought blue isn't like ice cold badge. Okay, so C minus in offense and defense, and probably deserves to be a little better. You've got Dave Jurger, D minus and D. So the Kings are going to have a lower rating. And here's an example. Like the Grizzlies have like their rookie coach has B's across the board to like buff their rating. Tyronn Lue, like the Cavs actually have a lower rating than their actual performance because he's got a D minus in defense, which I think is justifiable, but I don't think he should have a C rated offense because they've been a great offensive team the entire time that he's been with them. Fred Hoiberg's another guy that like the Bulls are playing a lot better, so maybe his coach rating should go up from C minus or whatever. Brett Brown has a great defensive rating as a coach. I don't know that he necessarily deserves an A plus rating. Maybe it should be an A or an A minus, because that rating's that rating is given based on the performance of like his Sixers teams from the past couple of years. Like they never had offensive talent. They always had to be defensive first teams to even have a prayer of doing anything, of winning. Whatever the 10, 15 games that they've been winning. But now that they actually have like talent on the team, they're not so much a all-in defensive team. They're actually a more balanced team. So maybe that's something that could go down. Or Portland actually has been a great defensive team this season. Their coach has a C minus grade, and that's going to reflect in their defensive rating. And they're ultimately not going to have the ranking or rating in the game that they deserve, even with the peak ratings and whatnot, because their coach has a rating that doesn't reflect their team performance. So this is like, and I made adjustments to all the coaches, and it had a significant impact on the roster. This is also something that doesn't take a lot of time. 2K could just sit down for an hour and figure out, what their updated coach ratings should be. Instead, I don't know what their priorities are. I understand there's a lot of roster work that goes into like my team and other modes, etc. But and who knows what they're working on in terms of like the next year's game and whatnot. But certainly, there's quite a bit more that can be done. It's not a one man, you know, operation over there. They've got a full squad, and this is just what I was able to uncover. Me as my one guy. So, uh, uh, yes, Chargers fan. That is correct. But I'm going to shut this down as I've talked about. I wanted this to be an hour, but I did go a little more in depth than about as in depth as I kind of wanted to go. But maybe could have been a little more efficient with my words. Certainly, it is my first time doing any kind of live stream video or anything in about 2 years. Yeah, that is cute. It is a nice little Easter egg. Um, I think previously like other 2K employees have been in the game. Um, I'm trying to remember like Ronnie Singh's been part of it in some area. I can't remember where. But those are I enjoy like dev Easter eggs. They made the game, so why not, right? Oh, you know what? I know where I've seen it. It's they're all coaches for the retro teams, for the all time teams or something. Uh, think, or maybe it's Nathan Ben. Yeah, yeah. Benish is related to Eric Benish, who's one of the top 2K devs. Yeah, I didn't look across the rest of these guys. I'm sure they're around. But anyway, just wanted to shut this down. Thank you guys for watching this live stream. I'm going to. I would like to make a lot more roster content. Certainly, I'm back with a vengeance. I hadn't really updated a roster or been like a roster editor in probably about 5 years, just because the tools that were available to me just made it too like inefficient, and the quick edit mode has really changed that for me. So it's allowed me to uh, have a little bit of a comeback. So I'm going to be updating my roster throughout the year. You can download it, and you surely have figured out how to do it by now if you've watched this stream long enough. Just by going to create roster and then search by online ID. My online ID is Real 2K Insider, as you have seen many times over throughout this video. You can follow me on Twitter at Real 2K Insider, and subscribe to me on YouTube, which is where you probably are watching this video. Likewise at Real 2K Insider. And I'd like to do a couple more roster videos and actually just get to talking about the NBA, as I love talking about the NBA. And I went a little in depth with like the statistics and stuff. I don't think I'm going to get that kind of specific in a regular like NBA discussion, but I will have numbers like that available to me when I get down and dirty. Always be prepared. It's the Boy Scout motto, and certainly I'm no Boy Scout, but don't come to a gunfight with the wrong kind of weapon. That's kind of how I view it. So thank you guys for watching this video, and be on the lookout for my next one. I would say don't play video games, play basketball. That's the Czar's tagline. I'm of the impression that you shouldn't play video games at all, and realistically, you've wasted a lot of time watching this video. You should go outside, play actual sports. Unless you're in New York where it's like 10 degrees, then it's okay. Stay inside and play video games. And Happy New Year to you all. I'll see you guys soon. John Marcus Rashidi, signing off.